shining down on the valley. Hope to be a fly fish till the day that I die. Spring has thawed out the long bitter winter. The water is clear and the skies are blue. I'm standing in the middle of the Beaver Kill River. Might even capture and release one or two. Well, some folks like horses, cats or a dog. Me, I like fishing with a rod and a fly. Yes, fishing is a favorite pastime of mine. If I couldn't do it, I think I would cry. Well, life is good when I'm wading a river. It gets even better when I cast a fly. If I catch a trout, it don't really matter. It's fun just to be here and give it a try. Trout is rising in the far eddy. I make a false cast, then take my aim. If he takes the fly, I feel so much better. And if he doesn't, I'll feel no shame. Stoneflies and caddis and the riffles are plenty. Mayflies courting on fragrant breeze. And cedar wax wings come down from the heaven, wait for their dinner up in the pine trees. The water is cold and my waders leak, and it's raining now on my favorite stream. I'll bear it all, just fish with a feather, so when I sleep I will have a sweet dream. And life is good when I'm wading a river. It gets even better when I cast a fly. If I catch a trout, it don't really matter. It's fun just to be here and give it a try. Oh, ripples and waves, pools and eddies, trout are rising for the mayfly. And the sun is shining down on the valley. Hope to be a fly fishing till the day that I die. Yes, I hope to be a fly fishing till the day that I die.
Hey kids, the pond is stocked and it's time for the 10th Annual Kids Fishing Day on Saturday, May 8, 2010 at Shenango Valley State Park, of course, from 9 till 1 p.m. Check-in starts at 8. Cost is only $2 per person. Raffles and prizes from 9 to 1. Grand prize drawing at 1 o'clock. Includes lunch at noon, free fly casting, fly tying, and free parking and no park fees. Pre-register by calling 648-5251. See you there.
There was a time, before the concrete started to flow, that the Snake River produced half of all the salmon in the Columbia River drainage. That's one of the major rivers in America. But the gauntlet of federal dams constructed to build the industry of the Northwest proved to be insurmountable, even for the king salmon, that mighty legendary fighter that holds such symbolic significance here. The confounding reality is we have the power to change the configuration and the operation of these dams. We have the power to save the salmon. The fight to save the salmon of the Northwest has national significance because, as in the case of the mighty bald eagle, it proves once again the tremendous importance of the Endangered Species Act. We must once again demonstrate the value of this important environmental law, and the salmon is the proper vehicle in which to do this. That creature that is the center of spiritual religion and a very significant part of this entire region must not be permitted to move into extinction. Your help is essential. Contact your congressman and urge them to see that the federal agencies, particularly the Army Corps of Engineers and the Bonneville Power Administration, become a part of the solution, and that they not resist change of a river system management that's going to make a museum piece out of the mighty salmon. There are two very important federal actions that must take place. First of all, the Army Corps of Engineers must be authorized to make the necessary structural changes, and OMB must be instructed to give BPA the necessary flexibility that it takes in their repayment schedule. Time is precious, ladies and gentlemen. Act now to save the salmon. Future generations will be in your debt.
The Salmon River no longer teems with Chinook salmon, and not one redfish returned to Redfish Lake last year, where once the bright vermilion of the sockeyes was a common sight. The great fish runs seem to have gone the way of the buffalo. As evening enfolds the rugged Sawtooth Mountains, an ancient custom is resurrected. For centuries, man has held candlelight vigils for long-forgotten reasons. And for centuries, the sockeye salmon have made the 900-mile journey home to the Stanley Basin. On this quiet summer evening, the two ancient traditions converge. A ritual watch has gathered on the banks of the Salmon River. Lookouts for what may be the last sockeye salmon in Idaho.
I just can't imagine no redfish in Redfish Lake, no salmon in Salmon, Idaho.
On April 2nd, 1991, the National Marine Fisheries Service proposed listing sockeye salmon as endangered. 2 months later, spring, summer, and fall Chinook salmon were added to the proposal as threatened species.
They're being listed because they're going away. The wild salmon in Idaho are in real bad trouble. The coho are extinct. The fall Chinook are down to less than 100. The spring and summer Chinook are down to a few hundred. We're down to the California condor stage with sockeye.
Near midnight on this August evening, the candlelight watch melts away, disappointed. But early the next morning comes the reward. For the first time in 2 years, a sockeye salmon returns from the ocean to its spawning grounds at Redfish Lake.
It was great to actually have a sockeye actually come back to our hatchery. It's been since 1989 that I've seen one, and this morning we got one 21 inches long. We think it's a male.
2 more males and 1 female eventually join the first pioneer. In this carefully controlled environment at Sawtooth Hatchery lie the sole adult survivors of a species that once colored the waters of Redfish Lake crimson when they returned to spawn in the fall.
It's a tremendous lesson for people to learn that gosh, here's a fish that lives in this harsh, alpine, sterile environment and migrates 950 miles to the ocean and goes almost to the coast of Japan and makes this huge circle in the ocean and then comes back to this river and comes up through all this commerce and industry and back to this pristine high mountain country. We can't lose that.
Arduous though that return journey may be, it's the trip to the ocean that is killing these fish. In the early part of this century, a sockeye or Chinook smolt would wash down the roaring runoff of the Snake and Columbia River system from Idaho to the ocean in about 8 days. This hasty journey allowed the small fish to avoid predators and permitted the extraordinary biological changes to take place that adapted from freshwater to saltwater. But as the West was settled, the tremendous force of the Columbia River system was looked upon as a source of power to be harnessed. Bonneville Dam was built in 1938. 7 more dams were added on the mainstream Columbia and Lower Snake by 1975. The Middle Snake added 3 more, the last being Hell's Canyon Dam, built in 1967. Now that same smolt can take from 20 to 90 days to reach the ocean, if it gets there at all.
Such a great number of them die during the out-migration process. And we talk about the dams, and people get real sensitive about the dams. It isn't necessarily the dams per se. It's the pools created by the dams and the system created by the dams of operating the river to maximize the hydroelectric system rather than to maximize the productivity of the fish. The answer is quite simply to make the river act like a river again.
70 to 90% of Idaho's salmon smolts never make it to the ocean. The number depends on water volume. These last 5 years of drought have had a devastating impact on salmon numbers. A good snowpack and a healthy spring runoff flushes the smolts through the reservoirs to Lower Granite Dam. Here, the Army Corps of Engineers has tried to transport the salmon in fish barges through the remaining dams. However, in low water years, the only way to ensure that the smolts flush through the slack water reservoirs is to reduce the volume in those reservoirs, thus creating the flow necessary to hasten the small fish on their way.
That's a matter of technology. It took technology to build the dams. And we've got people in the United States military that can figure out how to build a site on an airplane that will allow us to drop bombs into elevator shafts from 2 miles away, and we can sure as the devil figure out some way to get salmon back up a river and around a dam. It's a matter of having the commitment, making the commitment to do it, instead of to argue about whether it needs to be done.
What is the value of these fish? How do you put a price on a heritage? For years, salmon guide Bob Cole made his living on the Middle Fork of the Salmon River. His livelihood was tied up in these enormous fish. But for Bob Cole and other folks that remember the days of the big salmon runs, the intrinsic value of Idaho's salmon far outweighs the economic benefits.
I'm not sure that I'll ever see it again. I feel bad about it. Fishing's been a big thing all my life, ever since I was just a little kid. And to guide people that's never seen a fish that big, it's great to see them catch one of them. If they'd hook a fish, you never knew what was going to happen. They might bail off in the river, they might throw their pole in the river. It's just, it was great.
Bob guided out of Middle Fork Lodge, located in the Frank Church River of No Return wilderness. Here, along the Middle Fork of the Salmon River, lies pristine habitat, perfect for salmon spawning. The few remaining wild salmon return here in late summer to build nests in the stream bottom to lay their eggs. These nests are called redds.
See that swell on the water surface right ahead of us there? There's probably red in there, probably several.
Each summer at this time, Fish and Game biologist Terry Holubetz and his crew conduct what is called a red count. One way or another, either by helicopter, airplane, drift boat, or just plain walking along the tributaries, the many miles of Idaho's pristine spawning habitat is surveyed for salmon nests.
Here we have an area that the female has dug out and laid the eggs in about this area right here. And then she went upstream and dug farther up and covered up those eggs.
Although there are isolated pockets of habitat, they could use some improvement. For the most part, biologists have found Idaho's wilderness rivers to be prime spawning grounds for wild salmon.
Okay, 3 reds so far. And this area in the next 100 meters or so usually has a lot of reds in it.
In late spring, the salmon smolts emerge from their gravel nests and the count begins again. Biologists use snorkeling gear to count the juveniles. At this point, prior to their migration to the ocean, salmon numbers are good. But from the time a juvenile fish leaves here to the time it arrives here is the danger zone for these smolts.
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to produce a whole lot of fish, either in hatcheries or in pristine habitat like the whole Middle Fork and the Selway and all the designated wilderness, when they 80 or 90 or 95 or 98% of them never make it to the ocean.
The big salmon runs in Idaho are a part of our wildlife heritage. Anglers that grew up fishing for the salmon can no longer do so. Native Americans are being cheated out of their treaty rights. And folks like Bob Cole have only photos and memories to replace the feel of a huge salmon on their line.
I feel the same way as everybody else does. I think we need to do anything we can do, anything we have to do to get the fish back. It would really help the economy, there's no doubt about it. You get a lot of local people that would go up there and spend the night if they had salmon up there. There was so many of the people that were just going through Stanley Basin, be there for a day or two. They'd drive down the road and see somebody packing a 25-pound salmon up the shoulder of the road, and they'd burn the rubber and want to know who could take them fishing. And it was great.
Idaho's lost the buffalo, virtually eliminated the wolf. Caribou and grizzly bear teeter on the edge of extinction. The salmon has shown its determination to survive by its incredible 900-mile journey. Now it's up to man to match that fortitude.
And I think the nation is losing something. These fish go away, they're not going to come back.
America's streams and rivers are a vital natural resource. Fish, their inhabitants. With smaller waters flowing into larger, shallow into deeper, each is a tributary with many dependent upon it, each inheriting its legacy from upstream, and all the while a mirror reflecting the life within and around it. In these waters, trout, salmon, and man are inextricably linked. The cold, clean streams necessary for the trout and salmon's survival are essential for human survival as well. These fish react to environmental damage long before humans can even see or feel the effects of it. When pollution begins to cloud the streams, trout and salmon suffer, warning of damage to the natural environment. These wonderful fish are nature's barometers of the environment, living scientific instruments telling us when the waters and the wildlife habitat around them are unhealthy and at a crucial stage of alert.
Hello, I'm Lee Horsley, and I would like to introduce you to an association called Trout Unlimited. It's a conservation organization dedicated to restoring and protecting trout and salmon in our rivers. Both my son Logan and I like to spend time in the outdoors. It's for Logan and generations to come that Trout Unlimited's work needs to continue. By working to save trout and salmon, TU saves whole ecosystems that wildlife depend on and people enjoy.
Since 1959, Trout Unlimited has been a guardian of trout and salmon and the waters they inhabit, an organization of over 450 chapters and 75,000 members whose hard work and financial support is vital to this conservation effort. TU is made up of individuals who share a love of fishing and the outdoors, a commitment to conservation, and are dedicated to protect and preserve our natural resources for generations to come. Trout and salmon populations are threatened by changes in the waters in which they live. Water quality in streams throughout America is deteriorating. The causes? Industry, agriculture, timber harvesting, and out-of-control development. Each has contributed to the polluted runoff, acid rain, and silt that are finding their way into many of our finest freshwater streams. Trout Unlimited's headquarters are in Washington, D.C., where an expert staff researches, educates, and campaigns for what seems to be a never-ending fight for cleaner waters. But TU's growing influence begins on a local, grassroots level where much of the hands-on work is accomplished. A good example of TU's local efforts occurs here in the Green Hills of Pennsylvania, one of the nation's largest coal mining regions. Dr. Terry Morrow found that after 40 years of mining, these sites are leaking deadly chemicals into these once vibrant trout streams, turning the waters red with pollution.
In all evaporation,
it becomes acidic, works its way into the groundwater, and eventually pollutes the streams.
the result in the streams is that the water is acidified, which directly affects all the life in the stream. And in addition, the minerals, particularly iron, that is leaching out will precipitate in the stream, creating a coating on all the rocks, which kills all of the insect life, which the fish depend upon for food. So we lose the entire life of the entire stream, really.
So Dr. Morrow and his friends at the Iron Furnace chapter of TU organized an effort to build settling and treatment ponds to purify the water before it reaches Mill Creek.
You can see from the color of the water that the iron is becoming less and less. It's depositing in these holding ponds. And we're removing 80 to 90% of the iron. Only about 10% at best is being now discharged into the stream itself.
The success of the Iron Furnace project is only one of many achievements of TU's local chapters. Along the Cedar River in Michigan, renovating road crossings will reduce sediment and improve spawning. And in Nevada, local Trout Unlimited chapters, working with area ranchers, constructed fences, stabilized stream banks, and replanted uplands to protect the endangered Lahontan cutthroat trout from overgrazing. The Old Pueblo chapter in the White Mountains of Arizona is working to restore the Apache trout's habitat by placing structures in the water that will provide greater cover and help cool the water temperatures. And across the country, local TU chapters are educating young people in the classrooms and in the field. Trout Unlimited is helping to build an awareness of the complex and fragile interdependence between fish, the stream, the environment, and ourselves. The future of our fresh waters depends on a continued commitment from every generation. Trout Unlimited's national staff in Washington is trying to correct decades of unfriendly environmental policies. TU's research has proven that saving endangered habitat is vital not only to the ecosystem, but to the economy as well. Each year, the different strains of Pacific salmon depart the ocean and return to the streams where they were born in a procreation ritual as old as the species. It's one of nature's timeless miracles, a miracle where death spawns life, a miracle where instincts can only be interrupted by man. The fate of the Pacific salmon is imperiled. These fish are a valuable link in nature's food chain. For many animals and people, fishing for salmon is a way of life. By damming, locking, and diverting the river's flow, Pacific salmon in the lower 48 states have been driven to near extinction. Fish hatcheries, once thought to be a solution to disappearing fisheries, are often part of the problem. Gene transfer and pathogens from the introduction of hatchery trout are now thought to be highly damaging to the native and wild trout. In the winter of 1994, the Montana Department of Fish and Game found that 90% of the wild rainbow trout on the Madison River were killed apparently by an outbreak of hatchery-borne whirling disease. Hatcheries also absorb a disproportionate share of public funds. This money could be better spent on stream preservation and restoration. TU's national office continues its fight to influence policy for more intelligent management. Other Trout Unlimited projects include a legendary Montana stream. Norman McLean spoke eloquently about his beloved Big Blackfoot River in his classic novella, A River Runs Through It. Serious mining had virtually sterilized the stream, but extensive restoration efforts are bringing the Big Blackfoot back to life. Even though the river has experienced the problems created by mining, a new mine is about to be approved at the stream's headwaters. Trout Unlimited is conducting a scientific risk assessment and hopes it will serve as a foundation for possible intervention, as well as educate the public regarding hard rock mining's risk to the fisheries and water quality. In many ways, Trout Unlimited works much like a river itself. The national staff, the local chapters, and their members join to form a powerful force, every individual a tributary to a mighty waterway. Unfortunately, the dynamics of Trout Unlimited do not occur as naturally as the trickles of water that make their way to form the Colorado and Mississippi rivers. It takes years of work and significant funds to maintain the effort. We became conservationists gradually as we saw the outdoors shrink and spoil, when we could no longer return to our favorite streams because the fish were gone, when the wild places where we used to camp had been altered or destroyed. Over time, we realized that a focus on the restoration of the environment, and particularly our waters, has wide consequences. Trout Unlimited seeks to restore and sustain not only the water in our streams, the ground under our feet, the air we breathe, and the creatures with whom we share our habitat, but also our relationship to all of these things. Without your support, the work that must be done to save our waters cannot be done. Your contributions and volunteer efforts are vital to the successful reclamation and maintenance of this precious resource. Contact your local TU chapter for news of projects that are underway, or call the Washington, D.C. office for more membership information. If you've ever spent a beautiful day in the outdoors with your children, as I have, please consider contributing to Trout Unlimited's conservation efforts. It's what you do right now that will make a difference for our children and future generations to come. I thank you.